Central Asia. The region in the middle of everything, so it seems. And to be honest, if you ask me, it's the region where all the most interesting people lived, died, and came from. A region often overlooked by our history book, from the steppes of Mongolia to the hills of Afghanistan and Pakistan, from Siberia to Tibet. The heart of the Eurasian continent is a fascinating place. A place central as much to human history as it is to continental geography. Today, we shall explore the many wonders, or realistically, 4 or 5 of the wonders of this vast geographic expanse. Yes, we shall learn of ancient conquerors and their darkened tombs. We shall learn of beasts of ancient folklore from lands in our own antiquated past. And I feel like there was another thing that I thought sounded really silly when it was pitched to me. Something about soup bowls, or singing soup bowls.
Singing bowls.
Singing bowls. Yes, bowls that sing the shrieks of the damned, no doubt. Yes, something truly spooky.
No.
Well, I withhold my judgment as a humble master of spooky tales, and I will see if what you have to say is as interesting as what I have to say. That being said, it's time. What are you waiting for? Get going. Shoo!
Shoo.
Is anybody back there? I think our cameraman might be dead. Tombs, mausoleums, necropoli, the resting places of the honored dead, symbols of peace, of the tranquility of death. And why wouldn't they be? I mean, after all, a body that is already dead can't hurt you. They're locked away securely in their graves, sealed in their mausoleums and their tombs. And as long as these grave sites remain unopened and undisturbed, there is surely no way the dead could harm the living. On June 14th of 1941, archaeologists from the USSR exhumed the body of the great conqueror Timur from his tomb in modern Uzbekistan. It is the first time his body had been disturbed since 1740. You see, Nader Shah, ruler of the Afsharid Empire, Afsharid, I hope I said that correct, was a huge admirer of Timur and decided to remove his body from its resting place and establish it in a place of honor in his court. But when his workmen attempted to lift the casket of the long dead conqueror, it split in twain. The Shah's trusted advisors counseled him that this was a grim omen and that removing the body was likely a bad idea. Perhaps these counselors were correct. Gar-e-Amur is a truly beautiful structure, one befitting of one of the most influential rulers in all of human history. It is understandable how the spirit of such a man might be unsettled by the idea of his remains being removed from such a beautiful tomb. Inscribed within the tomb are two cryptic warnings for would-be robbers and fanboys alike. The first inscription reads, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." And the second reads, "Those who disturb my tomb shall release a invader far worse than I." Those of you familiar with global history during the 1940s might see where this is going. It seems that these warnings meant something more to Turkic chieftains and Iranian shahs than it did to the archaeologists of the 20th century, as they continued to exhume the body and reconstruct the facial features of the once great Khan. 3 months after the exhumation of the body, however, the Germans would invade the USSR. It wasn't until shortly after the body was returned to its place of rest that the Russians finally defeated the encircled Germans at Stalingrad, and the tide of victory seemed to turn in their nation's favor. None have found the great Khan's tomb, though it is said, according to legend, that he lies within a great necropolis hidden within the Mongolian steppe, surrounded by vast wealth, and the bodies of those killed to keep its location a secret. You see, not only were the workers who built the place killed and the attendants who carried his corpse, but their armed escort of 1,000 men, they say, was put to the sword to preserve the secret. But also the 1,000-man escort who brought his body to the place and killed the attenders of his corpse. Upon their return, you see, they were executed to preserve the Khan's terrible secret, or perhaps to simply preserve his sweet, undead slumber. Many expeditions from Russia, the USA, France, and Germany have attempted to find the Great Khan's tomb. But according to those living in the shadow of Barkhan Khaldun, where his body is said to potentially lie, this might not be such a bad thing. Many would say that the disruption of the Great Khan's rest, or the desecration of his tomb, would bring dire doom upon Mongolia and potentially the world at large, as was the case, it seems, when his ancestor Timur was disturbed from his slumber. Whether this is the case or not, they have a good point. You see, even if a legitimate archaeologist comes upon the tomb, there's no guarantee that it would not be illicitly ransacked by some less than savory characters. You see, there is currently a sort of an issue on the Mongolian steppe. Climate change has led to hard times for the Mongolian herds, and herds that starve lead to hungry, impoverished herdsmen. And a starving man is a lot more likely to value his family's well-being than the preservation of his cultural heritage in the form of long dead and buried antiquities. As a result, China has been able to really up the cultivation of the Mongolian illicit antiquities market. You see, in China, there's a huge market for goods related to wealthy Chinese businessmen have been cultivating this market for decades, but recently they've gotten a real boost. Illicit dealers in Mongolian antiquities will then acquire these goods from desperate herdsmen and sell them to wealthy Chinese businessmen, or usually wealthy Chinese businessmen, at a huge markup. You see, wealthy Chinese businessmen have been cultivating this industry for decades, but recently they've upped the ante when it comes to acquiring grave goods. This illicit grave robbing and selling of invaluable historic artifacts to Chinese nationals has no doubt done irreputable damage to the archaeological integrity of these sites. There are many who push for World Heritage protections upon the resting places of long-dead Mongol warriors, but they haven't quite accomplished it yet, to my knowledge. It is the hope of this humble keeper of horrible happenings, horrible memories, that the tomb of the Great Khan remains hidden for many years to come.
So, today is probably, arguably, the most modern of my witchcraft bits. A lot of modern witches, a lot of people that practice modern paganism kind of pick up bits and pieces from around the world to fit their own personal practices. I do it, everybody does it, every coven's different, every witch is different, that's just how it is, right? It's a very personal form of belief. And that's really good, actually, you know? The craft suits the witch. So today is just gonna be a short video on Tibetan singing bowl witchcraft. And I hope it's a short video because honestly I could kind of rant about this for forever. Excuse me, future Walter. Anyways, so traditionally Tibetan singing bowls are used as a meditation tool for Tibetan monks. The way I saw it described is that they would like ring the singing bowls and then meditate on that sound to help them separate body, mind, and spirit. I don't know how it works, okay? I'm not a Tibetan monk. I'm not gonna claim I know how they use that entirely. That's how I saw it described. It makes sense to me. It might not for everybody else. But anyways, so they were really introduced into modern witchcraft 20 to 30 years ago, from what I can tell. I saw a lot of different sources and they all agree that it's really been in modern witchcraft, modern paganism for about 20 years. Give or take, depending on who you decide is the person that started selling them. Like all things, there's a lot of she says, he says, hearsay kind of going on about that. But a lot of traditional, sorry, not a lot of traditional, but a lot of witches have adopted this as a meditation technique. Either they'll use them in a meditation ritual to actually meditate, to connect themselves with them and their magic, or just to meditate in general. Whatever the reason, it's become incredibly popular. You can find all kinds of sets on them. The Magical Cat, which is like one of the biggest sites for purchasing magical items, sells like a couple of sets of them. They're kind of neat, they're really pretty sounding. And then you get into the witches who use them to clear their chakras. I dislike the idea of chakras, okay? I will just state my personal opinion about this. Everyone practices differently. I do not think chakras actually exist, nor do I find it to be like there's no really convincing evidence for me. Chakras are basically pools of energy, pools of magic, depending on who you ask, within your body, and there are typically 7 of them, you know, and they go from basically the top of your head or the top of your spine downwards, depending on who you ask. Basically, by clearing your chakras from the top down, you clear the energy flow through your body. I don't buy into that, okay? I'm sorry. I can't get behind chakras, and I could rant about that for an entire video, but I won't do that. I'm here for the Tibetan singing bowls. I'd actually really like to have a set personally. I find them really soothing. I've listened to a lot of them. You can get different sets. They sell sets specifically in 7 for chakra cleansing. I've seen some Tree of Life sets, sets of 2, sets of 4. You know, they're sold all different ways. You can get them all sorts of kinds of mix match and the other. Anyways, we're not here for the culturally appropriated theology. We're here for the culturally appropriated cutlery instead, okay? I chose this as a prime example of what I talked about in one of the earlier videos, how we pick up parts of cultures that we feel work best for our craft. Exactly like how I talked about like the runestones in the Seder video, this is kind of the same thing. We've picked up something from another part of the world and made it our own in a sort of way. And I mean, you could argue about the cultural appropriation, but I think that there's more to be gained from taking a technique and using it to further your own craft than there's really that much to be said about appropriating somebody else's culture. Especially just because witchcraft is such a long history of just taking different bits of pieces and kind of conglomerating them into a whole. It's the whole culture of it is just witchcraft in and of itself is an umbrella term for hundreds of thousands of different practices and different people all united by one term. So that's really why I decided to do this video. It's not only a really neat tool, it's not only a really neat cultural item from Tibet, but it's a really interesting modern form of the way witchcraft has evolved through the years. And even if you disagree with that, I think it's still an interesting topic to touch upon. All this being said, it is important that you're doing this respectfully as a genuine exploration into your spirituality and into your craft. It's not something that you need to just pick up because everybody's doing it. If you genuinely feel that this is something you want to explore, I encourage you to do it. But you definitely always have to be respectful of not only the people that you've taken a piece of their culture from, but respectful of just that piece of culture in and of itself.
It's a bestiary, everybody come see some bees. The Aramaspy, a nation, or perhaps a tribe of ancient Greek legend, bearing only one eye in the heart of their forehead. These beings, warlike and fierce, could be called Cyclopean, but they are not the Cyclops, my dear viewer. They are not. Hyperborea, the great white north to the ancient Greeks, occupied in real life by an ethnic group known as the Scythians, and in legend, perhaps in legend, by the ferocious griffin. The Aramaspy people were said to occupy the Riphean Mountains, which were perhaps synonymous with the Urals, or perhaps the Caucasus. It's hard to say. And now I know what you're saying, young ones, in your heads, in your hearts, in your miserable, artificial, fakey, flaky souls. You're saying, Greece is really not Central Asia. Well, to that I rebut you these points of two. One, Greco-Bactria, a Greek kingdom established by the Alexandrian conquest, was geographically in the same region as Pakistan and Afghanistan. Very much Central Asia. What's more, Hyperborea was not just Ukraine. It was the area north of the Caucasus. The Ural Mountains are more or less Central Asian. They're a little more Near Asian, if you ask me, but due to the sort of mythical flimsiness of this and the fact that I'm saving the Mongolian sandworm for another video in the distant future, I figured it's better to go with something weird and slightly attached than something not. Second point, the Ural Mountains. Basically Central Asia, right there, I guess. Totally. I mean, what you gonna do? The Aramaspy are not to be trifled with, according to legend. They are fierce. They are formidable, contending not only with the gold-guarding griffins of old, but presumably with the fierce Scythians, 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 Skipper's boys in the region, and as a result, one could only deduce, dare I say, that the Aramaspy are to be truly feared. I mean, they fought griffins. You could not fight a griffin. I mean, look at you. Look at your legs. Look at your waist. Look at your shoulders and your arms. Mostly look at your legs. Like, go right now. Run for like 15 minutes. You'll be flattened, I can guarantee, dear viewer. You're not going to escape the griffin. It's a lion with wings and like an eagle's face. So it's got eagle eyeballs and can see really far in the dark. You're not getting away. And the Aramaspy beat them with one eye. And presumably took all their leprechaun gold and shipped it out to Ireland. Some say the Aramaspy still ward the mountains with their griffin frenemies, waiting for worthy challengers. Fear the primordial past, young ones, and the Hyperborea, lost to legend and time. Respect your history, young ones. There's always some nasty little thing you haven't learned yet. And you never know, that nasty little thing might be lurking somewhere you didn't expect. Sorry. All right. Let's see if this works. Out of the way, Serratus.
Be gentle.
He can take it. We lived together in a cramped coffin. Yes, it was a coffin, not a cabinet. For years. 1 year.
Be nice to Serratus.
11 months. Ish.
10 months.
We shared space. We broke bread. He broke breadcrumbs. It was hard times. He can take it. What I can't take, however, dear viewers, is not knowing whether this singing bowl thing actually works. So I am going to use this implement, yes, this fork-esque musical device, and I am going to make this bowl sing. Yes, let's see if there's truth behind your wily tales, witch. It's not very promising. Here, listen. Let me try another one. Ah! Whoa! Nothing, dear viewers. It's all hackwash. Oh! It really does work. It's the truth. The bowl. It contains your chakras. Look closely, and you will see enlightenment, dear viewers. Look deep into the bowl. Yes, feel the peace wash over you. Yes, it is as though you are descending into a deep, dark tomb. There you go, one filled with lights.
It's clicked.